So a thread went up on the Rocket League esports subreddit about DreamHack's decision to run the first round of group stage. It was a highly critical thread, discussing mostly about the issues with the GSL group stage as a whole, and it raised some genuine points about some issues that DreamHack did have in regards to running this particular tournament. But one of the things that kind of caught my eye was that it was a very, very weird point, and the whole summary was that it was basically implying that it's an unfair format because teams that had already beaten teams earlier on in the tournament lost to teams later, so therefore that was somehow unfair, which is something that I don't agree with, and I'm going to explain to you exactly why. I'm going to add my voice to this and explain to you why I don't think the format has a problem. GSL is the system that they used for this group stage, for both rounds of the group stage. It's a format that's about a double elimination, usually with 4 teams per group. Sometimes we have A, which makes it a little bit messy, but for the most part, it is 4 teams per group. And it's a system that has been tried, tested, and proven to be one of the fairest systems across all of esports, and many esports do use it. CSGO has used it in many of its major tournaments. In fact, speaking of DreamHack have run it in both their open DreamHack Open tournaments around their tours and their summer and winter events. They also run it in their DreamHack Masters events, which is their big $250,000 lands. As well as that, Dota 2, they got ESL 1 Genting that finished up recently. I think it's still going on. I can't really remember. I know it's been around this January time. They used the GSL system. And even at other DreamHack tournaments going on right now, the WCS in Leipzig, it uses a GSL system. Every single tournament, or every single major respectable tournament, will be using the GSL group stage. And that's not a problem. Like I said, it's a system that encourages second chances. It's a system that allows you that if you lose to an upset in the first round in the starting matches and later on in the decider match you face up again, you can adjust those mistakes. You can make sure that you are definitively the better team by maybe you lost to this one team or maybe you win against them. But however, if you're the definitive better team, then in theory you should be able to win both matches. That is the point of what a GSL system is, to really try, test, and prove teams' mettle in order to make their way out of the group stage and make sure for 100% that team is worthy to go into the next round of things. That being said, though, DreamHack's execution of this particular format was pretty poor, and that's where I feel like a lot of people are failing to articulate their issues with the format as a whole. GSL is not a problem. The way that they run GSL, however, was extremely dire for the way that DreamHack wanted to run their tournament. Now, for a start, best of 3. This is not that uncommon in GSL systems. We've seen best of 1s in the likes of CSGO. But in several opportunities, and whenever we can, we'll see major tournaments be doing best of 3 tournaments for CSGO. With DreamHack, they decided to go with best of 3 on this particular round of group stage, and I don't really think that best of 3 should be, it should really be, have any presence in a major Rocket League tournament. Maybe a minor tournament, maybe a weekly tournament. I could definitely say what we're doing in a weekly tournament. Because there's a lot of games to get through in a short time span. And for DreamHack, in this case, they had a lot of games to get through in this sort of short time span. So with that being said, I don't really blame them for using a best-of-3 format. I don't think it was a right call. I definitely think that there should have been a lot more thought behind it. Especially considering that most of the best teams in the world are here. But that's what they've gone ahead and gone with. And I don't really blame them. I think that maybe it may have been the best, the less of 2 evils. Because if you had best of 5s in all these group stage matches, then we would have been going on till the early hours of dawn. And trust me, I've worked events where you have to go through to from the arse crack of dawn straight up to the arse crack of dawn the next day. It's not a pleasant time for the talent, the players, or anyone else involved. So the decision to go with best of 3, I think, was not the right one, but a necessary one to take. That's just one thing, though. That conduces a lot of great upsets and a lot of maybe not justifiable upsets, but that's only just one of 2 problems. The second problem, and I think probably the most strenuous problem to the way that this group stage was run, was the fact that there's an odd number of teams for where you should be able to run a GSL group stage. You should have, at least in the most ideal circumstances, 4 teams per group. But DreamHack wanted to open up their tournament to the public. They wanted to open up to anybody who wanted to sign up, which is basically their whole shtick in this particular case. But they were only able to get 26 teams, including the invites and including the teams that came through the qualifiers. And if you do the maths, you'll know that 26 doesn't go into 4. As a result, we had 6 groups. The majority of the groups at this particular event were missing 1 team. There was only 2 groups that could run the full GSL system, and those are the groups that ironically didn't even come up with the worst end of the upsets. As a result, it kind of does defeat the point of what the GSL system should do. A GSL system should have 2 starter matches, 1 winners match where the winner who goes through will go through to the next stage of the tournament, a elimination match where the loser will go out of the tournament, and a decider match where the winners and losers of those 2 respective matches will go to face off to decide who is the second place victor of the particular group. But in this particular GSL style, in the particular way that the 3-team groups had to be run, you had to have 1 starter match. The second starter match was a complete bye, so the higher seeded team just got to go straight over to the winners match by default. And there was no elimination match as a result, drastically reducing the stakes and drastically reducing the GSL's ability to thin out teams in that particular group stage. Because by the time you get to the point of the decider match, you should have the middle of the pack. You should have the best team already through. You should have the worst team in that group already out and have the middle of the pack, the 2 teams in the middle area, being able to fight things out to decide who is definitively the best in that group. We didn't have that here. Well, in a lot of cases, we had a lot of rematches between teams who had already faced up in that first stage. And admittedly, while it does kind of conduce to what GSL is supposed to be about, the opportunity to prove yourself going on later on, the fact that both sides had to go through, or the fact that the loser didn't even have to go through the same number of matches as the team that they faced up against in the first stage, that's kind of wrong to me. That's not exactly what GSL should be about. So we had 1 team playing 1 best of 3 because they were the highest seed, and they only need to play the winners match. 1 team playing 2 best of 3s because they lost the first round. They went straight into the decider match without even having to face anybody else. And another team playing 3 best of 3s because they won the first match and then they lost the second match in the winners part and they had to play the decider match to go through. And you know, and I think all of us know, after many top tier tournaments have come through where teams have had to play so many series one after the other, that's a very stressful prospect and it can have performance issues. Hence why we saw a lot of situations where we'll go take an example from Group A, for example. Envious probably could have very easily won against London Esports, and I feel like they probably should have won against London Esports. I think that there was a couple of different theories you can bring to light about how London had the opportunity to learn about Envious through both playing them in the first round and seeing their game against NRG on stream. But in theory, you shouldn't be in a situation where Envious have played 3 straight games and then lost. There's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of asterisks amongst London Esports' ways getting through to the next round of the group stage. And there are a lot of questions surrounding whether this format could even be legit in the way it's been executed. So we've stated the problems, we've seen exactly what the issue is. How would I personally have fixed that? I want to present this because I feel like it's a very healthy attitude to have, to be able to not only state a problem, but be able to state how to fix it. Because, well, if you can't do that, then what's really the point in bringing up any problems? What's the point in complaining if you can't fix the issue? For me, I'm only going to be focusing on day 1 because day 2 and day 3 seem to be pretty solid. In day 2, we had the GSL system in best of 5, which definitely should be in effect at this particular point. And you're just seeing from the proof already, we've only seen really 2 upsets in the entire of the second round group stage. So for day 1, you can't really fix too much about the 26 team system, so you kind of have to run with the same groups. I'm just going to stick with those static groups just for the time being, just because we don't really have much of a choice. And I would go from GSL to round robin. If we had no open sign-ups, if we just had, 16 teams, 4 invites, 4 from qualifiers, then, well, we could run the GSL round, the GSL best of 5 system because, there's no issue here. There's no odd groups. We've got, we've got 8 teams in total, 4 teams per group. It just makes the most amount of sense. But considering that we have got teams of groups of 3, it probably makes the most sense to do a round robin stage so that every single team in every single group gets through on the same basis. They play the same percentage number of games and they have the same percentage opportunities to break through into the next group. It is the most fair system in this case. We could go into a massive system of Swiss, or we could go into a massive round robin and take the top 16 teams from there and seed them into a new option. But the problem with that is that it makes it overly complicated to keep track of things. It makes it overly complicated to try set up streams. And for the benefit of everybody involved, it just makes the most amount of sense to go with that 8 group system, go round robin. The top 2 teams, the ones that win the most games in their group, will progress into the next set of the group stage. I would keep it best of 3 on the basis purely of the time constraints and issues that DreamHack have with running an open tournament. I've said before, I've worked at tournaments where it's dragged up through to the crack arse of dawn, and we've been up since the crack arse of dawn. I always go back to the I-Series days where we'd be running a tournament, the stream would start at 10 AM. And we'll be there until maybe 12 a.m., 1 a.m., just casting matches because, you know, getting through a 16-team bracket of best of threes is extremely strenuous and extremely long. And at that point in the tournament, at this particular point in the tournament, when you've got so many teams, the most number of teams at any point in the whole bracket, it makes the most amount of sense. Not the most ideal situation. Again, I'd much prefer if we just had 4 invites from 4 qualifiers. We run an 8-team tournament or a 16-team tournament based off of that alone. But you can't have everything in the world. And I'm just working with what we've got in this particular tournament. Day 2, I'd keep it the same. It's already been proven the work. And day 3 will be the best of 5 in quarters and the best of 7 in semis and finals, as it will be tomorrow in that particular day. So, in conclusion, what I kind of want to say is that it's not a problem with the GSL format. It's just a problem with the way that DreamHack have chosen to run it in the context of this tournament. If they had done things differently, if we had 32 teams, then there would be absolutely no problems whatsoever. If there weren't as many upsets as there were, and there weren't as many situations where teams faced off both in the first round and in the decider, then maybe there wouldn't be as much backlash. But for certain, there are problems with the way that this format was executed, but not with the GSL system as a whole.